Hi, I'm Jackie Hardy with NDG Live. Thank you for joining us, as today we are speaking with Honorable Kimberly Tolbert. Honorable Tolbert is the Chief of Staff with the City of Dallas. As we've been discussing about the North Texas Tollway Authority's overall assessment with their MWBE program, we felt it would be a great opportunity to speak with Honorable Tolbert, who was once a former employee with the agency. So she is able to give us some very credible insight and information that we think will be informative to our viewers. So we hope you enjoy. Thank you. Yes, so we are so happy to have you on, Kim. And just to get started, the first question I just wanted to ask you is if you could kind of explain your role as Chief of Staff. I know you kind of oversee all the operational functions for the City of Dallas.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much again for the opportunity to share with you today. You know, the Chief of Staff was a title and a position that was created in 2017 when the new city manager, Mr. Broadnax, came to the city of Dallas. And so I will say that we didn't have a perfect description when we started. But my main role in what I do in that Chief of Staff, in this Chief of Staff role, is to really kind of serve as not only the top advisor to the city manager, but I also provide a lot of strategic executive oversight of several of our key city departments. And those departments include, of course, the day-to-day operations of the city manager's office. I work very closely with the mayor and the city council office, the Office of Homeless Solutions, the Office of Community Care. I have the Office of Communications, Marketing, and Outreach. I have the Human Resources Department, the Civil Service Department as a liaison department, and the Office of Governmental Affairs. And then in 2020, the city manager made the decision to also give me the Office of Police Community Oversight. So my portfolio is very diverse.
Yes, it is.
It really allows me in that position to really tackle some of the big issues that we're dealing with in the city. But I work also with the executive team, which includes our other chief titles, which is the Chief of Economic Development. We also have a Chief Financial Officer. We have a Chief of Equity and Inclusion. So I work with those individuals, as well as with the other assistant city managers. So my role with the whole executive team, I think I serve kind of as that conduit, working pretty much at a Chief Operating Officer level, where I'm kind of touching pretty much everything, but doing it in a way to where I'm advising the city manager and I'm giving him kind of that day-to-day insight around some of the things that are going on, how we are performing, how we're executing strategies of the city council, and how we're really getting to those priorities. And so it's a very unique role. Most days, I will tell you, I feel like Olivia Pope.
Putting out fires.
Yeah, I feel like Olivia Pope.
Yes.
And I tell people that I do all of the things that I listed, but when something goes wrong, I get those phone calls. And it's not at that point where I'm doing anything other than getting it done and acting. So I am grinding most days, all day long, trying to make sure that we're taking care of the business of the city.
Wow. And with this being a new position, you're a new position they created, you're kind of setting the template.
Absolutely.
Don't have anything kind of to reference. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I tell the city manager, I said, the day that I don't do this job, they'll need about 4 people to do the job.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I'm exhausted hearing you and what all that entails. That is a lot. And then you tack on being in a pandemic, that exhausts it even to another level, I'm sure.
Exactly. We've had to work smarter. You know, I can't get any more hours in the day. I'm at capacity when it comes to more hours. But what we've really had to do, and I'm glad you mentioned that about, the pandemic, the challenges with that is that we've really had to lift up and make sure that we have truly, it's one thing when we talk about empowerment, but making sure that our departmental leadership, that they have our support to go and do the job. At the end of the day, the people that are boots on the ground, the people that are out there in the trenches every day, we've got to give them the tools that they need And we got to
Yeah.
make sure that they go get the job done, because we can't touch every single thing throughout the
Right.
day. Time just
Right.
doesn't allow for us to do it.
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
I've learned during the pandemic, I believe, how to be a better leader and how to better
Fantastic.
empower those individuals around me. And we got great
Sure.
people. You know,
Yeah.
when you're running an organization that has close to 13,000 employees,
Ooh.
you have to work smarter and not harder.
Harder. Amen. Exactly. That's true. And learn how to entrust and delegate and know that, yeah, they're qualified to do the job you've hired them to do. That's awesome. And
Yes.
with that, I know you bring a lot of wealth of leadership, which is why we wanted to bring you in on the discussion about, we've been, as you know, discussing about North Texas Tollway Authority's MWBE program. They had a study done, and it certainly showed that there are still some disparities there. Knowing that you work there and certainly in leadership roles, we wanted to just get you in on the discussion as far as with respect to their efforts in trying to procure minorities, specifically Black contractors, because we are, as you know, a Black-owned newspaper. Kind of, you speak to your overall perspective on how their MWBE program fared during your tenure there.
You know, let me start with this.
Okay.
I had always heard about the North Texas Tollway Authority because I was in Dallas, you know,
Yes,
during my times of kind of growing up in the organization. I started with the city of Dallas in 1993. So I've been in this business for 29 years. And during that 20-year career, I've really only worked for the city of Dallas and then spent almost 9 years with the Tollway Authority. So these two organizations, is kind of, that's kind of where I grew up, right? And so seeing them during the times when I first got there in 2008, to where they are today, and I'm talking about the Tollway Authority, I think a lot has changed. I think that there are a lot of things that even during my tenure there, because I was there from 2008. I got there in 2008 and I left in towards the end of 2016. Is that going out into that organization which was predominantly a kind of a male-run organization.
Yes. Right.
A lot of people didn't have the Tollway Authority on their radar when it came to diversity and contracting. And going into that environment, I think what I learned, because there were things that I had to learn as a professional going into that, because I'd never worked in that industry before. I'd come from the aviation at Love Field as the assistant director when I was recruited to go to the Tollway Authority. So I knew a little bit more about transportation, but I'd never worked in this political subdivision, which is what the North Texas Tollway Authority is. It's a political subdivision of the state of Texas. So it's kind of a hybrid. There's the public pieces, and then there are the pieces that really truly define how it connects closer to the private sector. But anyway, I said all that to say, when I got there, I learned quickly that it was going to take some time to really crack the culture of the organization. And so the one thing, and this came from just some great advice, a former city manager in Dallas who, you know, I've maintained a great relationship with, said to me, Kim, you got to know when to talk and you got to know when to listen, and make sure that you surround yourself with the people in that organization that can help you make the changes that are necessary, because not all change is it's never easy, right?
That's right.
And so I believe that that's kind of where we started. I needed to listen, and I needed to understand some of those unique issues and things that were going on within the departments. I think people often forget that oftentimes decisions around contracting, they're not made at the top. They're made at that project manager level. They're made at the level where the people that typically are going to be the ones overseeing and managing the contracts, that's who you got to make sure that you're bringing along. It's not necessarily the executive director and the board. It's the people that are sitting at the table making the decision and doing. That's exactly right. And so we were able to, during that time, to really begin to kind of pull back the layers, kind of unpeel, you know, take that onion and pull it back and say, okay, what are the real issues? Where are the things that we know are not being done well? And what are the things that we need to do to educate and to inform the project managers and the people that are at those levels about the
Right.
value in
Of-
diversity. It's about,
Right.
it's an education thing. You got to change the mindset, because I
Exactly.
think for a long time, MWBE programs, as much as I know that I'm an advocate and I'm a champion for MWBE programs, there's been this stigma that you're going to bring folks in that don't necessarily have the qualifications
Patience, right.
or
Credibility. Yeah.
the ability to do a
Yeah.
good job. And so we had to change the mindset around, these are people that can do the work, and they just need the work in order to
Right.
continue to define and elevate their expertise. And that's where we
Absolutely.
started. We started with an
Okay.
education, I would say a campaign around the value of these
Mhm.
our MWBs. I've been a small business owner myself, and so I
Right.
understood the
Sure.
uniqueness of what we had to do.
Absolutely.
So fast forward, we're in 2022.
Okay.
I believe that there's always going to be an opportunity to sharpen the pencil and
Sure.
tighten your belt.
That's good.
The things that we were able to do with the Tollway Authority, whether it was the creation of the road program, a lot of the work that we did around unbundling contracts, the work that we did around bringing department directors at the Tollway Authority to the table to meet with
Okay.
contractors and understand the uniqueness of their needs. Those things all worked during that time, but you can
Okay.
never stop. You just
No.
can't stop.
That's right.
You have to
Absolutely.
continue to find out, because what the barriers were back then may not be the barriers right now. So the
That's true.
conversations have
It
to continue.
changes.
That's exactly
Dynamic.
right.
Amen.
Exactly right. And so I
Yeah.
believe that the listening happened. I believe that the education piece has happened. I
Okay.
believe that the culture within that organization, that there were a lot of good things, the leadership there, whether it was the executive director or it was the assistant executive director, they got it. But now
Okay.
you've got to continue to fine tune that and continue to address the new issues that then
Right.
come along, because we're in a new time and age
That's right.
where all of us are trying to figure out how to pivot. All of us are trying to
Mm.
figure out how to maintain the relevancy of the business
Sure.
in a community. And so I think that that's where they are right now, which is a
Sure.
good time, because
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
time now to sharpen that pencil, tighten that belt, and continue to elevate the importance of
Sure.
MWBEs in this community.
No, that's so good. And I know, because we're all creatures of habit, and certainly we're drawn to the things that we're bent towards. And what I'm getting at is, people hire people that they're most comfortable with, or that they have something in common with, or looks like them. So there's that piece of accountability because at the essence of diversity, it is bringing in those that don't look like you, and making sure that there's equity of the proverbial pie is given to everyone. So can you kind of speak to the accountability measures that you've seen in the public and private sector, and what are, I think, the pros and cons of both, with respect to that, the accountability?
Absolutely. It's always back to, people use the word accountability sometimes, I would say loosely,
Okay.
because accountability goes both ways. Accountability has to be not only what I'm going to do
Okay.
and hold myself accountable, but what you're
Sure.
going to do and how you're going to hold yourself accountable. And so one of the things that I used to preach all the time when I was at the Tollway Authority, and I would do this in settings with, our small businesses, whether they looked like me or they didn't look like me, I would always say, when you come to the table, I need you to come correct.
Okay.
I need you to be ready to compete. Don't come to the table getting ready. I need you to be ready, because it's one thing for us to be out there championing and talking about, the need for MWBEs at the table, the need to make sure that everybody has, the playing field is level. And then when I tap on your door, then you got to go get ready.
Right.
So do the work, because to me, that's the accountability that we have to make sure that we stress to our MWBEs. Then the accountability then on the organization is to make sure that once we've identified those opportunities, we got to go back from a compliance standpoint and make sure that we're doing our end of the deal, to make sure that those opportunities are being presented and we're doing it in a transparent way. It's one thing to say that there's no opportunity, but I need for you to demonstrate that to me. I need you to be able to share with me, I've got these projects, here where the opportunities are, here's where we believe that there could be meaningful participation. And then we got to do a show and tell around what that looks like. It's one thing to say that there are opportunities. And then when you boil it back, there's not an opportunity for somebody to go and do outreach. Outreach ain't paying no bills.
Right.
We need, you know, I used to laugh when I would be in my rooms with some of the department directors. I was like, we need to be digging some dirt.
Right. Amen.
Right.
Yeah.
We need to be bagging up these backhoes and digging some dirt to build the buildings and build the roads. And so I think the accountability, we can never get it twisted. It's got to go both ways. We got to prove up the opportunity, and we got to make sure that our MWBEs are ready for the opportunity. So no matter if we're talking about the public sector or the private sector, that dual accountability is critical.
That's good. That's really good. And I appreciate that, because so often you hear it from one side, you know, which is the agency side that's doing the hiring, but there is certainly an accountability on the side of the contractor as well. Yeah.
Yes.
And then when you have both of those that are equally accountable, then that certainly, you'll see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'll materialize into diversity.
Absolutely.
Pyramid. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Thank you. And can you kind of speak to some of the pitfalls that you've seen organizations certainly are vulnerable to and hindering the integrity of and validity of their MWBE program?
Absolutely.
We want to shed light to that.
You know, Jackie, one of the things that I can tell you, and I've talked about this publicly, is that we've allowed, in my opinion, the goals to hinder us. This whole piece around setting these MWBE goals, I believe in some people's mind that the goal becomes the only thing that we need to deliver. And so then they become the ceiling versus becoming the floor. To me, that has been a major, you know, I get in trouble sometimes because I talk a lot, but I also tell the truth.
I love it.
And what I tell people is that take it from this perspective, Jackie. If goal setting has been utilized to help us grow our small businesses, and it's been utilized to help us bring more diversity to the table,
right,
we're still not there.
Yeah.
So the goals, in my opinion, have not allowed us to move the needle any further along than where we are.
Right.
So my conversations that I have often are, we got to get beyond the goal, and we got to get to, it is the norm. It is the right thing to do. We shouldn't have to have these goals.
Right.
We've been talking about goals for 20 some years.
Exactly.
And so my point is that to me, it has hindered us, because now everybody's focused on a goal. Move away from focusing on a goal to the right thing to do and just do it. Right. And to me, that's going to help us when we talk about culture, when we talk about transformational change. It needs to be just part of the normal way we do business. Right. And so to me, that's been a hindrance. The second thing that I think has happened is that we focus so much on the front end of the goal setting that we don't go and focus on the compliance and the monitoring. Meaning, I set this goal and I say these contractors are going to come in and they're going to be at this level. Well, who's watching the back of the house? Who's making sure that the back door is not open and some of these goals begin to slip through the crack when it comes to the actuals? So we can't just set the goal. We got to go monitor, and we got to make sure that the contractors are actually doing the heavy lifting and the work to make sure that we're not just meeting the goals, but then oftentimes we can exceed the goals. And so I think that has become a huge, huge hindrance. I think the other thing is that we continue to regulate our minority business, our minority women-owned businesses. When we talk about these mentor protege programs, we got to begin to talk about them also in the role of being the one doing the mentoring. Because many of our small businesses have capacity, ability, and they've got the portfolio to where we need to start thinking about them in a different light. You know, I struggled early on at the Tollway Authority calling our MWBEs the mentees, because many times they can be the mentors. And I think we've got to change the mindset that they're not capable, nor do they have what it takes to become the mentors. That in itself has also hindered our ability to elevate their worth and the value that they bring to the contracting environment.
No, that's really good. Yeah, because it's dual, it's both ways. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. That is certainly something that I think, you know, just because of conventional wisdom, we think this is the way it is. But no, like you said, we have to change our mindset. That's where it starts. And I love the fact about the goal is really the start. It's not the finish. Yeah, that's really powerful in that respect. And I know a lot of times these programs, there's a almost like with, I think, again, human nature, there's kind of this, you get lackadaisical because you think, well, hit the goal.
Yes.
But, you know, there's so much more that can be accomplished. And yes, how do you get people to think like that? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
On that. Yeah.
And that takes time, Jackie.
Okay.
And because I know that we've made so much progress, I'm not saying that goals haven't helped us, but I am saying that if we're still, I would say this, if we're still talking about goals 10 to 15 years from now, then the intent of the goals have not solved any of the problems.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Because at some point, we should not have to continue to pound the pavement about the goals. It should be about the work and why it's important. And diversity now becomes a part of just what we do. It's not about we got to go pound somebody on the head to make them work towards a goal. It's that this is what we do. This is who we are. This is why it matters. And we solidify that it's just a part of the day-to-day and how we function and how we do the work and why the work is important, because we can't get to a level of success, in my opinion, if we're still trying to figure out how to bring our MWBEs along. Our MWBEs have done the work. They have demonstrated their value. They are doing work across this country, and they're making a huge impact.
Exactly.
And being able to ensure that there's a competitiveness that allows us all to get to success. So they've done the work, and they deserve to be treated with that level of integrity and respect from, no matter if you're talking about a public organization or a private organization.
Sure, absolutely. And certainly it begs to that mentality of, if you succeed, I succeed. You know, it's not, you're my enemy if you get this contract over me. It's like, when one succeed, we all succeed. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. And I would say our charge that we have to our minority-owned businesses, who I know do the heavy lifting. The charge is that we've got to make sure that we give them the support to be able to reach back. I tell minority companies all the time, those that are able to do their own prime jobs and they can come in and they don't have to be regulated to a subcontracting role, then bring some other ones on. Bring them on your team.
That's
you know, we want non-minority firms to bring us to the table. Well, if I'm a minority-owned company, a woman-owned company, and I'm a prime and I have that ability, then I have a responsibility to go and bring those other smaller firms and put them on my team and help them grow and help them build capacity. And I think the more that we do that, the more we will get out of this mode of, it's going to take other people bringing us to the table. We need to get to the table, and then we need to make room for the others. That, to me, that is our charge. And that's what we have to continue to stress to our minority and women-owned companies.
That's good. That's really good. No, thank you for that. And I kind of wanted to get your thought or certainly opinion if you have been privy to hearing this as a claim that I know the Black Contractors Association has spoken about with respect to how they have seen, and maybe not NTTA specifically, but how they've seen how, because there's a good old boy network, we know that. And there's still racism that exists. And so a lot of times, some of these prime contractors manipulate the system by maybe registering the business under their wife's name, because that qualifies them as a minority women, an MWBE. And so as a result of that, it's taken away from those minority firms that really do meet the qualifications of an MWBE. In your experience, have you seen that? And if you have, could you speak to that? And what's the remedy to that? Just
Wow.
out.
Well, that one is really tough.
Sure.
Jackie, let me tell you why it's tough. It's tough from the standpoint of, and as a woman who, I've been out there, I've seen that,
Yes.
be the case. I think we have to deal with the bigger issue, and the bigger issue has to be, how do we then look at the data? How do we segregate the data in such a way to where that's not under the radar, but we call it out in a way to where we begin to show if there's this pattern where our smaller minority-owned firms are not getting the work, then we need to be pulling back that layer of why not. And I think the more we dig into that, I tell firms all the time, if you don't get picked or selected in a procurement process that you've gone through, you have the right to ask what you did wrong. Right. And you should keep on asking, and you should keep on asking, and you should keep on asking. I think that's going to help us kind of elevate maybe what might be going on when it comes to, maybe there are some WBEs that truly might not be run by women. Right. I think we just got to ask the question. It's really difficult because we don't certify firms ourselves. The beauty of, I think, the North Central Texas Regional Certification Agency is that they've got the professional staff, and this is what they do every day of the week. But I think that compliance piece, as I mentioned, is critical. I think you got to go in, and you've got to be out you got to get in the field. You got to go and see who's out there making those decisions in the field, and see whether or not, if it is those individuals that are said to be running the company. That's a lot of work. It's not an easy process, but I think you got to look at the data. You got to be out there asking questions. You got to make sure that you understand what's happening around you, because the way that the whole WBE environment is set up now is to make sure that you have women at the table, which I think is a great thing. And oftentimes there is that concern that a lot of the WBEs that are not minority. So ask for the data, separate the data, go and look at the data and say, okay, so I'm talking about WBEs. Well, how many of these WBEs are truly women of color? Right. Exactly. Ask the question, ask for the data, interpret the data, and then go back and see whether or not, if there are things, and challenge the data. That's the only way that I think you can really get to what might be happening in that area. Because nobody's ever going to come forward and say, my name is listed on the company, but I'm not the one running the company.
Right. Exactly. That's
Nobody's going to tell you that. Yeah. And so you got to ask the question. You got to make sure you got to do the due diligence. And I think that's the only way that you can begin to uncover some of those things. Who's in the room and who's making the decision. It's hard. I've not necessarily dealt with that directly. I've heard the stories, but then I go back to look at the data. Tell me what's going on with the data. Let me see it. But then making sure that even our women-owned firms that are owned by women of color, how we are competing. Right. And if they are winning, what's causing them to win and causing you to lose? Get to the root of it and deal with it from that standpoint. I think it's the best way that we can move forward.
Absolutely. And I know you spoke of compliance, and I know one of the things that I spoke with the current minority who's over running the IETO the MWBE program for NTTA was oversight. That is so critical, in making sure that those compliances are being met, and who's, overseeing that,
Yeah.
ensure that, I think, is another critical component, to this claim for sure.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can never
Yeah.
do enough. You can just never do enough when it comes to, number one, you got to ask the questions. And then
Right.
number two, you've got to make sure that you understand that the questions got to lead to the proof. You got to be able to show me something. Don't ask the question and then somebody gives you the answer without asking for the data to support the
That's
answer.
good.
That is critical and that is
Okay.
important.
Yeah, that's really good, because data doesn't lie usually. Yeah, that's
Yes,
good.
absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's
You can't,
right.
if you're doing it in an open, honest, and a transparent way, then the data should help inform decisions. And when I say that, it should then tell us the areas, whether it's, construction, whether it's the procurement areas around professional services, whether it's around our what we oftentimes refer to as architectural engineering. It ought to then tell you where you're missing the mark. It ought to tell you where you're not getting that level of participation and those number of firms to the table. And then you can go back, and whether you're working with a Black contractors, whether you're working with the regional Hispanic contractors, whether you're working with the Asian contractors, you can say, here's where we're not showing up. Here's where we got to do a better job. And then you take your energy and your efforts and you go focus on those areas, because that's where your opportunities are. That's where your opportunities are to get people ready to be able to compete within those respective areas or those respective procurement categories.
Yes, and in your experience with NTTA, when that is being challenged, have you seen, what's your thought on that? Are they receptive to that challenge? Are they responsive in trying to say, yeah, we want to get to the bottom of this. We see some discrepancies here.
What I can tell you is that I would hope that because of the progress that we made, and with the great team that was there, that was led during the time of my tenure there by Anthony Coleman, who I stole from Dallas and brought to the Tollway Authority, who did a phenomenal job.
He is awesome.
Yes, did a phenomenal job. And there's so many other people that I know are vested in what is right. I would hope that that the core that was built around inclusion and around making sure that they have kind of put their money where their mouth is, that they've continued, and that they've done it in a way that is not a tug of war, that it has been conducive to this whole inclusion agenda, and that their receptiveness that I know that I received back during my time after we went through a process, as I talked about, to educate, to inform, to really build that internal support with the stakeholders, and as well as the external support, that we got where we needed to get to. I would hope that since I've left and many others, that has continued. And I think the challenge would be is to not go to sleep on them, to continue to look and to ask the question, to show up and make sure as an entity who I know, I mean, I talked about them operating from a hybrid standpoint, but they spend tons of money. And so get in the room, ask the question, and hold the new leadership in that organization accountable, and make sure that they know that you're not asleep and that we're paying attention. And I think that's the piece that I believe allows for you to get to, are they supportive still? Are they still doing the work? Are they still out there grinding to make sure that we don't just arrive at a point where we stop, but we continue to raise the bar. And I would hope that that's what they have been doing since the time that I left and the time that Mr. Coleman left. I will tell you, I had some rough days out there, Nay. Well, no,
I'm sure, because you're having to change the culture too.
Yes. Sure, but I didn't mind. I didn't mind that, because if it was easy, then they didn't need me. They didn't need me.
Very true.
So I went in to make a difference, and I went in to make sure that the folks that haven't always been at the table that I
Mhm.
represented them in a way that I would want them to represent me.
Sure.
And do it in a way, I remember my grandfather used to tell me all the time, stop worrying about if somebody gives you a seat at their table, bring your own table. And so
Oh, I like that.
that
Yeah.
was part of what I tried to
Yeah.
do during my tenure at the Tollway Authority. I tried to bring
Wow.
my table when I didn't have a
Yeah.
seat at the table.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's good. So that tenacity just has to
Yeah,
continue. Yeah, absolutely.
it
And
has to continue.
yeah,
Can't go to sleep.
no,
Can't
that's
stop
true.
working. Can't stop pushing.
Right.
Can't stop asking the questions.
Sure. And that's one of the things that I love about the Black press. When it comes to certainly asking those questions, and I know that at the heart of why we're doing these big
Yes.
movements is what it's about. Because yeah, we, like you said, we want to be at the table. We want to be, and we certainly bring wealth of wisdom and skills and abilities that warrant us being at that table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we do. And it's sad to think that we still got to work as hard.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
but I think we have to galvanize the energy.
Mm,
We got to stay on one accord when it comes to the needs and what we have to do as a community, as a minority community. We've got to continue to work together. We can't
sure.
be on separate agendas. You
No,
talked
that's
about,
good.
Jackie, that we know that there's a good old boy. Well, let me just say this. There's a good old boy system in our community too.
Preach.
Okay. And so it's important for
Mm,
organizations like the North Dallas Gazette to also crack those codes and be
mm,
able to say, okay, now you want to be at the table. What are you doing to bring other emerging
okay.
firms that
Good
may not
point.
have done business before? What are you doing? What are you
Sure.
doing to prepare them? What are you
Right,
doing to educate them? What are you
right,
doing to help knock on the door for them?
right.
And not just for the people that have continued to get the word
Yeah.
over and over again. And I learned quickly on, you know what? We got a good old boy system too.
That's a
And
good
that's when
point.
I started pushing. Before you come to me and ask me for the opportunity, bring me some more folks that ain't been here
That's
and let
good.
me help work with them. And so I just think it's important for us. Again, it's back to
Mhm.
that accountability that we
Sure.
have as a community. We
Yeah.
have a responsibility within ourselves to make sure that we are also opening the door, and we're not
Mm.
just waiting for the organizations, but we're doing that work as well.
Wow, that's good. That is good. And when we get to that level that we're bringing the next person up, yeah,
Yes.
really good,
Yes.
because then it begins a domino effect. That's awesome.
Yes, that's exactly. That's how we
Yeah.
that's how we get to ongoing success. This is a movement,
Mhm. Hmm.
and we're the ones that drive the momentum in the movement. The North
Hmm.
Dallas is driving the momentum in the movement, and you all have to continue to do what you're doing now. Ask the question, peel back that onion on
Yeah.
both, on the
So-
organization side and on the contracting side. You got to do both.
That's good. Yeah. And I think I know that, I mean, when you think about the advantages of inclusion and diversity, it's kind of easy, but I certainly want, if you could speak to that. Why is it good to embrace inclusion and diversity across the board? The economic advantages, of course, they're there. Can you kind of speak to why that is so critical for I know us to be a healthy society overall?
Well,
Yeah.
you just said it. I mean, it boils down to that because our experiences have been different and in a lot of ways unique.
Right.
We bring a level of creativity
Mm,
that allows for the uniqueness of our circumstances and our situations and how we deal with that. And
sure.
often it provides a new perspective on
Mm,
how we can begin to solve those problems that exist within our community. So the diversity piece allows for you to do that in a way that creates it's almost like you are developing and you're making this beautiful quilt. The success of that quilt and the long-term sustainability of that quilt is for all the pieces that come together. And so diversity brings those pieces together, and it allows for this quilt to be utilized for many, many years to come, because it's intertwined. It's got this, your piece helps my piece helps your piece.
Right.
So as an organization, we're stronger. We are stronger when we come to the table with the pieces that allows for us to connect at a much greater level, because the perspectives around how we solve our problems are greater. And we get on the other side of the problem, and we can begin to work on the solutions. It's not like we will ever have an abundance of resources. We will never have everything we need, and we will never have all the money we need, whether it's public or private. We'll never get there.
That's right.
But diversity to the table, we get closer to solving those solutions with the resources that we've been given, because every piece then matters, and every piece taken into account. That's what diversity and that's what inclusion does in our communities. And so for us to ever get to a point where it's not needed, I just don't see it, because I think that's when we stop growing, and that's when we no longer be able to maintain our competitive edge.
Okay, that's good. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim, for your awesome words of wisdom and insight on this topic. Seriously, it has been such a pleasure to speak with you, and I hope it won't be the last time, honestly. I do. I really do.
But I appreciate that.
I wish you all the blessings. I do. Because I know in this day and time, it's not easy for you guys. Y'all are in many respects the front line in what's going on right now in our country. And so thank you so much for your time. So wasn't that a great discussion with Honorable Tolbert? We always appreciate her knowledge and certainly insight to this very important discussion on MWBEs and just the need for inclusion and diversity within our public and private sectors. So again, we are so thankful that you watched, and we look forward to having many more important discussions. Thank you.